next panel is titled Patient Capital for Systemic Change. Now, patient capital is essential for systemic change in the development sector, of course, because it provides long-term, flexible support needed to tackle complex social problems that allows organizations to take risks, to innovate, and to build sustainable solutions rather than quick fixes, right? This patient funding empowers organizations to address root causes and create that systemic change rather than being constrained by short-term funding cycles. So please welcome our co-panelists for this session. We will just take a minute for the stage to set and we can welcome our co-panelists. Super. I think we're almost there. Thank you. Thank you. Please welcome Namya Mahajan, co-founder, Rocket Learning. Dr. R. Balasubramaniam, Member, Human Resource Capacity Building Commission, Government of India. Mr. Rizwan Koita, Director, Chairman, Koita Foundation, NABH. And this session will be moderated by Sri Amit Chandra, co-founder, chairperson, A.T. Chandra Foundation, MD and chairperson, Bain Capital India Advisors. Thank you. Over to you, Amit. Thank you.
Good morning. Such a pleasure to be back at Charcha and kick off the proceedings with this lovely panel. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the incredible work that my fellow panelists have done, and it's truly a privilege for me to be anchoring this session. You know, this topic is really close to my heart. I'm sure it's close to many of your hearts. And what we hope to accomplish today is really explore how philanthropic capital can move beyond the short-term orientation and think about long-term systemic change. And maybe even touch upon why that is really needed. And I think each of these panelists brings a very different take to it. Their experiences have shaped that. And so that's what we're going to try to do. Now, look, this topic of systemic impact is a term that's increasingly being used today. My own experience is that perhaps some high 90% of numbers in terms of capital as well as human time being spent by civil society is not focused on systemic change. It's actually being focused more on short-term orientation. And there are a variety of reasons for that. We'll try to explore in this conversation why that is the case, what's really the barrier for it, despite the fact that many of us recognize that that should not be the case. And I think interestingly, each of the panelists has in many ways moved the needle when it comes to long-term change. And so what does it really take to get there? What's the journey? Is something that we will try to explore as well. And hopefully at the end of it, we'll leave maybe 10, 15 minutes for Q&A and a conversation with all of you. So with that, let me actually invite my panelists to start the conversation. And perhaps let's start with Dr. Balu. Dr. Balu, as you know, has had a very interesting journey. He's been on both sides of the fence. A grassroots worker who's been an activist, even been in jail for all the work that he has done with tribals. And then now he sits on the other side in the highest echelons of power, in the Capacity Building Commission, working on issues of policy. And so he's actually seen things from both perspectives. So Dr. Balu, what's your perspective on this topic, and what will it really take for us to travel this journey?
When I first got invited for this, the first question I got was two loaded words. Capital is easy to understand for most people, but the word patience, we think we understand. And each of us have differential tolerance to patience. How patient is a word I sort of struggled with, and how system is systemic, and what kind of a system we look at. Most of the time, we see systems that we know of, we're comfortable with, we're operated in. But I found that most of us are incompetent in appreciating the depth and extent of systems that are actually superimposing on several things. What do I mean by that? And I'll just try to explain to myself. I want to start off with a very, I basically love telling stories, so I'm going to start off with a story. 40 years ago when my work with the tribal started, I was passionate and I said we should change the lives of the women I was working with. And there would be people who would sell buns in the tribal areas. That fellow would come from Mysore, it would come on top of a bus. Our market sectors are extremely perfect in delivering services. We couldn't get medical care to rural or tribal India, but we could get alcohol and all this Maggi and Coca-Cola and this highly refined flour buns. So it would come the supply chain was very good. And finally one guy on a little moped, huge bag hanging around, he'd go to every colony and sell. And people were addicted to it. So I thought I'm very intelligent. I was all of 23 at that time. I can beat the system and break the chain and say we will get a tribal women to manufacture these buns. And being a doctor, I thought a little more health conscious. I'll have a little less maida and more other things and all that. So I went and spoke to CFTRI. CFTRI is a Center Food and Technology Research Institute in Mysore. And they were very happy, collaborated, found a donor, put up a bakery, and 10 women started working. And they would actually sell buns in the colonies. I thought, wow, I cracked the code. It worked very well for 8 months. 9th month, again, my patient's tolerance was 8 months. So I went to the women and told them, now you are the owners. From tomorrow, you're going to run this bakery. Now you are the CEO, you're going to run and make all the money yourself. Why should you need me in between? Next morning, I went to the bakery, there's no woman at all. Third day, nobody. Then I went to the tribal colony and asked, why aren't you coming to work? And what they replied actually explained to me how little I knew of the system. Right? They said, well, we never wanted to be owners. We were happy being employees. You pay us a daily wage, we'll come and work. You ask us to own the unit, we'll not. It looks a very small example, but what it taught me was, if you cannot take them through the journey of understanding that employment is the first step in the process, you have to grow, and it's an extremely empowering process to become an owner, the factory will collapse. Now the story doesn't end here. I accepted it, moved on, and 20 years later, set up the first women-owned, women-operated energy bar unit, completely driven on millets and whatever they knew. It took us 8 years to settle down. The ease of doing business, now I have to be careful, I'm inside government, possibly is more for IT sector and for Bangalore, Gurgaon, Noida. Try setting up an enterprise in a rural tribal area. It took me 22 months, I've actually measured, with all my influence, for the women to set it up. It's working even today after 7 years. They're making profits. They have a CEO themselves. Why is it working today? Now it's 12 more units we have. The reason is, what is patient was 22 years for me. Young children came into my school, and that's a system. My school is also part of the system. We educate them. We started talking about enterprise in the school. Spoke about what are the skill sets I have, what do I know, and where can I get to. How do I understand packing? How do I understand Amazon? How do I understand Flipkart? And we are not able to sell online. We don't make enough. How do I understand local markets? How do I understand hyper-local markets? Now, that is the effort you have to put. And somebody had to hold my hand with money to walk this journey of 22 years. Today, they don't need to give me money. But that is patient capital. And systemic change means there's so many layers. And I'll tell you, the biggest system problem I had was not all the externalities of the system. We always think system is outside in, but we forget the inside out part of the system. How do tribal women see their own empowerment? How do their mother-in-law see it? How do their husbands see it? How do their, when I call them girls because they were children literally in my school and they grew up. And so one day when I was talking to them, they said, it's not just the fact that we earn here. Sun, rain, our units are open. We don't have a man watching over us and ogling at us. We don't have to worry about, and when we go to the shop, she said, I feel so powerful when my mother-in-law or my father-in-law gets refuse credit and gets told that you get your daughter-in-law to come, then I'll give you the credit. So see, that's also part of the system, the economic system, the social systems, the political systems. I think all this, so to me, capital willing to travel along with you, and capital is not just money. That's another mistake we made. You know, I had an extraordinary corporate house, Titan holding our hands, working with us, trusting us and said, okay, it takes as long as it takes, we are there with you. And you can't make such a commitment if you're working on a year, right? And they helped us with branding, they helped us with optics, they helped us with how do you do, that is not something which I knew as an NGO. So I think the whole package matters, and that's how, I'll stop
Fabulous.
here for now.
That's a great start. So basically, systemic change is really a long game. It needs to begin from within, and needs to be supported deeply from outside.
Complex game.
And it's a complex game. So be prepared for all of that. Wonderful, wonderful takeaways. Namya, if I may move to you. Fortunately for you, it didn't take you 22 years or 8 years. You know, rocket learning is a remarkable story. I'm a big fan of what you've achieved in a short period of time, taking a big sticky problem and really showing how impact at a low price point can be delivered at scale. What's different in today's world which has enabled you to do that? And how can others potentially emulate what rocket learning has done? And what will it take for rocket learning to maybe have 10x the impact that it's having today?
Yeah, thank you, and such a pleasure to be on this panel with deeply inspiring people and to be in this group. So what rocket learning does is that we work on early childhood education. So this is the years before a child turns 6, which are actually the most important years in any of our lives. It's when our brains are developing at a rate that they'll never develop again. It's when the roots of your sort of biological future are being laid, right, in many different ways. And what we do is actually work through, we partner with government systems, with the Anganwadi system, which is the world's largest publicly funded daycare system. And we work to support Anganwadi workers with the tools, skills, knowledge that they need to actually support kids in the most effective way. And so what we actually realized a month ago is that we are now covering 350,000 Anganwadi centers across the country. So 1 in 4 Indian villages, there's an Anganwadi worker who's getting rocket learning content every day, using it to teach her kids, and kids are learning, right? We have impact data showing that 50% of kids would normally be school and life ready, and at the end of our program, that's close to 75%. So it's been a 5-year journey. We get a lot of jokes about why we called ourselves Rocket, because I think what we saw was that there was a potential to make impact at scale by leveraging what's already there in the community. So I think that was really what we tried to do, which is you have this massive system, right? You have the Anganwadi workers, and for a long time they focused on nutrition and health, but they can actually be places of learning as well, right? Because children are going there. So can we use the trusted community leader who's already there and who's been probably trained for the last 20 years? The second is using technology, but really meeting people where they are with technology. So we send content via WhatsApp. We've been rejected for some tech accelerators that you're not techie enough, this is WhatsApp, right? But that's the technology that, again, is in people's pockets, right? It's what's reaching them every day. So early childhood development is not a new problem, or this is not a new solution. Since the 60s, we've known that a high quality home visiting program where you change caregivers' behaviors changes lifetime incomes by 60%, reduces school dropouts by 30%. It has lifetime impacts on kids' resilience, the quality of their relationships in the future. But this could never be replicated, because how are you going to make a network of people who will actually deliver this week on week with that same energy and motivation? tech actually allows you to do that, right? So it allows you to reach people where they are in real time when they need that solution. And then lastly, I think sort of partnering with government and sort of, I think the ultimate system is paradigms, mindsets, narratives. Those are the ultimate systemic change that we're all trying to make. And for us, that would be that early childhood education is as important as your competitive exam, right? Can we make people feel that the first 6 years of a child's life are as important as the years they're going to spend from 9th to 12th, right, preparing for college? So if that changes, then the way that people invest in the early years, the way that parents act, caregivers act, would be completely different. So maybe that's where we're trying to get to. In the middle, there is the government system which exists, which is at scale. So how do we change that at every level, at the district, at the state, at the national level? And then there is the program itself. So I think right now, I would say that we're a very efficient factory. So we can create impact at sort of 120 rupees per child per year. We can create that kind of impact. But where, we need to be is, spending money, of course, on replication and that, creating that large-scale impact. But no single organization can do that. So how can we also build movements, right, within the sector, within the government? How do we create champions? Within business, can we create champions? So that in the end, this becomes something that's just the way it's done, right? This is the way early learning is done, and that does not change. So that's a little bit of our story and where we're looking to get to. One score is not enough.
Thank you. What a wonderful story. Rizwan, I'm going to move to you, and yours has been a really fascinating journey. I've had the privilege of seeing it from the ringside. I remember when you and Rekha started thinking about getting engaged more deeply with the social sector. From there to now, where you've delivered truly extraordinary impact, and I think in many ways you're just getting started. You've chosen an approach which is quite different, and I'll let you talk about it, but it's an approach that really enables others to thrive, succeed, and bridges philanthropy as well as the system, i.e. the government. So it'll be great to hear from you why you chose that approach, and why did you decide to be more of an enabler, builder of platforms, etc.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much to Nudge to give us this opportunity to share our thoughts and ideas with all of you all, and we couldn't have found a more distinct set of people to be on the panel with. So thank you very much, Amit, and everybody here. I've been sort of relatively new to the whole social sector, being a tech entrepreneur all my life. About 4 years back, almost to the date, I stepped down from my corporate role to spend time in the foundation. And now I spend 100% of my time here, right? So it's something that I've had the opportunity to observe fairly closely. I'm going to sort of oversimplify to make the point. So from my vantage point, the way I look at it is that social sector organizations, see, at the end of the day, the government of any country has to deliver the services and has to do what is required to do, because it has the massive amount of scale that is required to be able to solve problems. So one of the biggest contributions that social sector organizations, doesn't matter whether you're in education, healthcare, agriculture, climate, whatever, is to be able to drive innovation at a certain scale so that it can then get emulated and rolled out by the government at a country level, right? So at some point, if Rocket Learning is doing something, the government of India would struggle to be able to be as innovative as needed to be able to develop a solution. But if a Rocket Learning type of organization can demonstrate it being working at scale, then I would hope that 5 years from today, the government of India will be able to say, hey, you know what, this model is working, it has been demonstrated. Can we take over some of these things and now not only do it in the case of education, but by the way, the model then can be worked in other areas as well, right, in some way. So one of the biggest contributions that social sector organizations can make is to innovate and drive proof points which can then get either adopted or emulated by government organizations. Now, the problem that I see, again, wearing an outside-in perspective, is that if you look at money coming into the social sector, there are, or money that needs to get spent in India, let's start with that, right? There are essentially three sources of capital. You've got the government, you've got corporate CSR, and you've got philanthropy. The problem with the government is that while they have a lot of money, it is very hard for them to spend money in areas that are not yet proven. So for example, I was just mentioning to our team earlier, if the government of India has to spend 10,000 crores, 20,000 crores, 50,000 crores on building highways or roads, there is a set formula for doing that. There is an RFP or a tendering process, and you just have to define from where to where you want to build a road, you have to issue a tender, it will get done. You want to build a hospital, there's a formula. But the moment you have to drive a new thing which hasn't been done before, for which 1,000 rupees are required, forget 1,000 crores, then the bureaucrat will struggle because there is no set process to spend the 1,000 rupees. And an extreme example of that I was, encountered in the last year was that we built I won't get into specifics, but we built a chatbot for the government department, and at some point it was all developed. It took us like a better part of a year to build it. And then it had to be hosted on WhatsApp, so they needed to get a WhatsApp SIM card. They needed to get a SIM card. And the department didn't have a policy of how because it had to be a government number. It couldn't have been a foundation number it was part of their program. So they had to get a SIM card, but there was no approved process for buying a SIM card. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months went by, but there's they're sending. So at some point after about 6 months, we were like so frustrated because everything is done, right? So we spoke to the guy and said, "Bhai, 6 mahine ho gaye, abhi wo SIM card nahi ho raha hai, aapka approve." So out of sheer frustration, he sent me that file on WhatsApp. I still have it. I preserved it, right? It's a 34-page of correspondence has happened in that department, right? Because a SIM card has to get procured. Yeah, and I'm just illustrating this as an example of, and they're all. People on the mail trail are senior IS officers and all of that. So they've done things at massive scale. But now getting a SIM card has all kinds of obligations associated with it. Security, privacy, responsibility lega, kya hoga, kya communication iske upar hoga, nahi hoga, etc. Who will sign off against that file, whatever. So the government, let's recognize that it has a lot of money, has a lot of resources, but struggles to innovate, for the reasons that we spoke about. The second pool of capital that can come in to help society is CSR money. Now what has happened is that increasingly, driven by many things, including change of CSR norms, change of FCRA norms, and many other things that are happening in the country, more and more CSR activities now has to get reported and the money has to get consumed in such a restricted manner that it has almost clamped down corporates in their thinking process on how the money can be used and for what causes. Because if at the end of the day, 85-90% of the money has to be spent in the year, for the year, a demonstrated outcome for the 100 rupees you spend with the reports, etc., then the corollary of that is that it is hard to build on funding innovation project which will require 2, 3, 4, 5 years with questionable output. Because every time you do innovation, there's going to be risk involved, right? Not all your projects are going to be successful. And there are two problems with that. One is money doesn't come in from CSR into innovation. Secondly, what happens is that in any corporate, right, you'll have the CEO of the organization, then you'll have, senior executives, and then goes down to the CSR manager, whose role is to, sort of do the very, very sort of administrative part of disbursement and then accounting of monies. And because there is no innovation, there is really no appetite in the CEO or the executive team to get involved. And a lot of them has now become a mechanical exercise कि see if our profit is 100 then X% has to be given to CSR. अरे ये 2 लोग हैं हमारी कंपनी में, वो लोग जाके 2-4 जो स्टैंडर्ड NGOs है उनको जाके पैसा दे देंगे, वो रिपोर्ट बन जाएगी, check mark is made, yes I'm compliant to my CSR norms, and that very very precious money that could have otherwise been used to drive innovation, new thing, has now ended up doing fairly what I would call not necessarily bad, but regular things. You'll fund some vaccinations. You'll do this. You'll do some education of kids. You'll paint some buildings and do something in some hospital, whatever. Right. So we're losing the opportunity to be able to use that money for the purposes of driving innovation. The third source of money is philanthropy. Here what I'm seeing from the outside is that there is a lot and increasing amount of philanthropy capital coming in because, we know that there is a certain segment of, business people, entrepreneurs, etc., who have doing well and, their net worth is increasing and therefore their ability and desire to put money into philanthropy is increasing. Yeah. What I'm noticing there is the ability to be able to use that capital to be able to drive innovation is really a function of the individual's desire to spend time. For example, I'm a very wealthy individual and I'm just going to pick a number. I have to spend 100 crores because I just feel I want to give away 100 crores. To spend that 100 crores in a manner which is time efficient for me, I have the money, I don't have the time, Then what I will do, I'll go to a Tata Memorial. I will say 100 crore check, kuch to bana do aap, and you put my name on it. I'll go to an IIT Delhi, safe, no nonsense place. Nobody will think, say yes, center bana do, iske upar it's the sports center, whatever center, whatever. Just do a very low risk project with a very high caliber, recipient in a manner that is very capital intensive, because now I have the problem of spending 100 crores, so now I've spent it in a manner which is absolutely sensible, no questions asked, with a very credible organization. And therefore, I'm from IIT Bombay, right? I see so much desire to build hostel capacity in IIT Bombay. And, I'll scratch my head and saying, Abhi, wo itna precious philanthropic capital. Remember, government is not innovating, okay? CSR money is not getting innovating. Now I've got all these high-profile IIT alumni. They're collecting money all across the country. और वो जाके hostel बना रहे हैं अभी, and please don't take this as a negative comment. It is not a negative comment because it's all really good work, right? But I wish some amount of money went into building a pool which would allow a faculty from a Cornell, Harvard, MIT, Stanford to come and do a sabbatical or come and spend 6 months. It'd be very expensive to do because of that, government money is never going to come for that. But that experience of that 2, 3, 4, 5 faculty of global capabilities coming and spending time on campus because you kind of created the budget would be so inspirational to 1,000 students on campus, perhaps, right? And I can give you many such examples, right? So I feel that the ability to be able to look at the way we are looking at capital and stopping ourselves from doing things which are lower risk and at least putting some fraction of money into slightly higher risk projects which will create innovation models, and we will create 10 more rocket learning type of examples. And some of those monies will not be successful because that is the essence, right? You're doing high risk projects, some of them will be successful, some won't. But I think it's imperative for us to do that, otherwise we are honestly not going to be moving the needle much for the government of India, who's the beneficiary of the innovation, and will not be able to drive change and enhancement. So that's sort of my...
Thank you so much for those insightful comments, Rizwan. I just want someone in the team to keep us honest on time and let me know. There you go. All right. So maybe let's do one round of quick comments, maybe 2 minutes each, on something that's clearly emerging as 2 impediments to systemic change, okay, from what each one of you spoke about. And, I'd love for us to it's always important to identify the problems. It's very clear that there are two sets of problems. But I think it's equally important for us to also maybe think about, therefore, what are things that we can do, whether we are an NGO, we are a policy maker, or we are a foundation. So I'd love for each one of you to maybe spend 2 minutes on the two themes that are emerging. One theme that's emerging is that for systemic change, we need innovation and focus on innovation. Could be both product innovation and it could be process innovation. And the second is that we need patient imaginative capital. Each one of you spoke about that. And that capital is probably more available in theoretically in foundations, less in CSR, but CSR is the biggest pool. So I'd love for each one of you to maybe spend just 2 minutes talking about your perspective on these two themes, on what does it take to change things with a quantum jump, not kind of an incremental approach. Maybe, Namya, you want to kick us off this time? Yeah,
Yeah, happy to. I think, so I think in the evolution of an idea, right, and an organization is basically an idea or a solution. And what we're trying to do, I mean, the first thing maybe to just understand is that incremental change will not cut it. Right? Like, we've been trying to do incremental change for a very long time, and most of the solutions we're working on are complex and difficult, and we need to do something sort of radical and different to actually make a dent. So I think maybe that's the first thing. We need to acknowledge that we need substantial, big change, and not the safe, predictable things, as Rizwan was saying, to actually make a dent in India's biggest problems. So that's the first thing. And then I think the R&D that an organization needs, during its evolution is at 2 times, I would say, the most. So that's first in the beginning. So when you're just an idea, you're going on the ground, you're doing a pilot, you're getting women in a factory, and then they don't show up, second day, third day. That's when you need a lot of the innovation, because the risk of failure is the highest at that point. So find early stage organizations that are doing something really interesting, invest in them, and imagine that many of them will fail. That's the way we invest in for-profit startups, right? Like, find an idea that you believe in, keep them accountable for, certain outcomes, but not, but keep an eye on impact, right? The second time when I think R&D is really important is during that big shift, when you're going from doing it yourself to handing over to somebody else. Right? So that could be other organizations using your model, that could be the government using your model. That requires innovation of a different kind that, frankly, has not really been done. So there are very few programs. We think of the midday meal as a gold standard program. No government is going to come in and say, from tomorrow, I'm going to stop feeding your children in school, right? But the way that happened is that there was a lot of innovation within the system. This is not an easy thing to do. So, your classic wisdom would say, why would a government do this? You have to procure, you have to make this meal, there's risk because, there'll be worms in the food every, 8 months, right? But it's done every day in schools across the country. So can we think of our programs and the programs we support as how would we get there, right? And there is sort of a lot of innovation. So one term that I've loved from a fellow social entrepreneur is the term tenderpreneur. So the moment you try to make your program systemic, there's a tender that comes out. And then people come out from the woodworks. These are people who do everything from teacher training to building software. The only thing they know how to really do is win government tenders. And that's not a skill that I have at Rocket Learning, but we need to build it perhaps, right? In order to actually be, something that sustains for, 15 years, 20 years. We want to look back and say, we have changed the way early learning is done, right? So investing in that kind of systems change R&D is something that we've not seen very often. But we're seeing some foundations, of course, Mr. Chandra, Mr. Koeta, the Convergence Foundation, Act for Early, ACT grants. Those are folks who are willing to be patient and help us, innovate and build these skills that we've never had before. And yeah, that requires people who love the mission. Right, so the other thing is focus on mission and impact, and think with sort of that 10-year view, right? Not with the 2-year view, can I put rupees in and see impact coming out, but what will be the inflection point and what will it take to get there?
Excellent. Dr. Balu, I want you to have the last word. So, Rizwan?
So I'll tell you what my foundation does in a sense. So we decided that rather than do yet another set of programs, we said we will fund technology investments both in not-for-profits and government sector to be able to catalyze change. So there are two parts to what we do in the foundation. One is we work with, over the last almost 8 years now, we've supported about 30, 40 not-for-profit organizations. They're all really amazing organizations who needed to make the 0 to 1 transition in the use of technology to scale. And many of those are sort of, when we first start, unknown projects. So they get these are organizations, they get a lot of program money, but very hard for them to go and convince a donor to buy a server or buy some licenses for a BI tool or whatever. So we support the tech investments for them, and I think more than just support in money, we have a program team, and we have sort of a community of experts who are working with these NGOs and helping them achieve the 0 to 1 transition in the use of technology in their business. And that has been a very successful program. I would say amazingly successful, especially because in the corporate world, tech transformation programs historically have had a 50% hit rate. We are at about 85-90% hit rate in our NGO transformation programs, which is very good. And the other thing where I spend a lot of my time is more around healthcare and the use of technology in healthcare, working for the government. And again, there the objective is, can we work with the government to de-risk some of their early efforts in the use of technology to improve healthcare. And then once the government organizations that we work with learn how to do that, then they have more than enough capital to be able to then allocate to it to be able to do this. So it could be, a center of digital health at IIT Bombay, which is now about 4 years, so it's quite flourishing and doing quite well. But when we started the discussions with the director of IIT Bombay, he didn't, and his team didn't really have a sense of what a center of digital health could look like. So it seemed like a risky investment for an engineering organization, but now it is a mainstream center, and now everybody understands. So for the IIT to take this forward is a no-brainer, which was not the case, 5 years back. So in a sense, it helped. Similarly, we work with Tata Memorial. We are looking at use of technology in cancer. It was a new thing for Tata Memorial and the National Cancer Grid. What was most gratifying to me, of course, we've done good work, but the thing that excited me the most is that they had a national convention in August. And in the national convention, at the end of that event, it was a big auditorium inside Tata Memorial. They had cancer experts and directors from all the institute. And they had this, online thing where it identified 3 areas where the National Cancer Grid can be most supportive to you. And you were the people across all cancer centers across the country. And the number one item that came out of that is digital and AI. Right. So what all the directors were saying was, of course, the National Cancer Grid does a lot of work in advocacy of new clinical protocols and new drugs and new therapies and all of that, right? But those were all second, third, fourth, right? The first and the most important thing was all the directors of different institutions saying that they want help with AI and digital as a number one thing. And to me, more than anything else, that demonstrated at least the fact that there is, we haven't solved anybody's problem as yet, but we've at least let them know that they have a problem that needs to get solved, and that itself is a big step in the right direction. Yeah.
Fabulous. Dr. Balu, the last word. Maybe we then have time for a couple of questions. Yeah.
Last word is difficult, because last few sentences I'll try. No, I was just thinking as both Namya and Rizwan are talking, what works, what doesn't work, what is the reality that's there ahead of us. One of the biggest challenges I find is most of us start off with a problem definition, which we are very comfortable with attempting to solve. I think the reality out there is many times we don't even know how to define the problem. So we need patient capital to even co-generate the definition of the problem statement. Only then you can actually go to the solution statement. What are the 4 or 5 things which has changed over the last, at least in my view, I suddenly realize I'm very old now, 4 decades of looking at this. One was earlier, people were very concerned if there are nil or no returns. Today the world has got to accept it as normative. They're willing to say, okay, it's okay if we don't get any returns. Second, earlier, we kept getting challenged for social impact. And NGOs were not comfortable saying we're going to allow ourselves to be measured. I remember when I was saying, I'm doing good. Who the hell are you to ask me how to measure it? I have made such remarks. And then saying that it can't be measured. Why are you looking at something abstract? Today, we are all completely, it's become normative. Measuring social impact has become normative. That's a great change. Organizational resilience and supporting it was only seen if you got foreign funding. That NGO, the donor NGO would tell you do it, and you would do it to tick a box. Today, we are comfortable with understanding that we are not capable of finding solutions, and so we have to be resilient to discover the problems also. We were all, I'm looking at from the social sector side, we were very against looking at market solutions. We thought markets are crude people, they should not even be trusted. So I think today the world has opened up and saying market-based solutions are possibly a way to solve real-world problems. So these are things which are actually getting solved. We should build on it. But what are the two things which I'm finding which is still a challenge which I would like to solve for and donors or others to look at is, let's face it, risk appetite is very low in India as a funding world, not just for social sector. I talk to a lot of people around the country, even the kind of risk appetite that possibly a US investor would have, an angel investor would have. Indian investors are really risk averse in their own ways, and so social sector is much more risk averse. Second is, earlier we had a lot of sectoral divisions. I felt that social sector problems only social sector could solve. Today we have reached a point where the government's narrative is samaaj, sarkaar, bazaar. I would say that we haven't discovered how to make this work. All of us agree that we have to learn from each other, support each other. For social sector, it just means piggybacking on government's programs, solving the government's problems. Why are we looking at just to pull a leaf out of Namya's thing, why is only an anganwadi early child education? What about community embedded education process, family embedded education process? Could we solve for that also? So could we think beyond just what already crafted government solutions that are in place? Especially in healthcare, I keep getting this challenge. So I would term it as 4 or 5 things if we can keep in mind as both social sector as well as investor as well as the policy of the government. It's very easy to define products and work for it. Excellent. Provide immunization. It's easy. And I think leave it to the government to solve. Why are we wasting our time? Process, like he said, buying a SIM card is a process. Government, until it defines the process, it's confused. So social sector, even they craft processes and want it to be replicated. I would request, now that I'm in this side of the fence, some processes in government are very good. They may be painful, frustrating, slow, but they are good. How to make it fast? Corporate India can help us. But technology can help us. But what I would like social sector to do, like for example, I'll give a small silly example. In my NGO, if I wanted a laptop, I just call up in the morning, my procurement officer gets me the laptop in the afternoon. It's 4.5 years, I've still not got a laptop in Government of India. I have to go to GEM, I have to go do that. I don't want that laptop, that specifications there. I want my own Apple. So finally, I'm using my private Apple without the government recognizing all the government information is on my private computer. Right? This is
not being telecast live.
I tell this everywhere, so it's okay. But I'm telling that's a process problem. So we should be able to teach process. That is where we are very good. Yeah. Next is, we should accept that promotion is a problem. We don't promote successes. I want to now say we should promote failures. We don't talk about failures. I have good practices. Whenever I talk, I'm called only to talk about all the failures. Let me talk about why I was arrested. Right? Why was I put in jail? What is the government not liking? We should be willing to learn from those failures. That we have to promote failures is my point of view. Celebrate it. Have a hackathon for failures and give them a check. Why are you only saying you succeeded, so I'll give you 1 crore rupees in prize reward money? We have to change the narrative. People, and the last is performance and indicators. The other mistake we make is anything gray, anything uncertain, we say we can't be defining it, we want to have indicators. I say, if you can't have indicators for success, also co-list indicators for failure and say, what are the indicators of failure both of you are agreeable to have? But have a third category, indicators of lessons learned. Because we have to build a body of knowledge. And I would just say one thing, patient capital is not just risky, but what we have to keep in mind, people move, ideas move, contexts move. And just because something doesn't work, don't blame people, ideas. Context itself changes. Ecosystems are not time static. When I started work transforming India's bureaucracy, I thought we discovered the problem, we have the solutions, we thought education, training, so many other things are solutions. But I now realize just simple large language models has disrupted what I was doing 4 years ago. forget anything longer. Today, we are not even asking the people to do courses. Now we are saying, you go put out a problem you're facing as an officer, whichever role you're playing. My algorithm will search the repository of information, solutions, experiences. If you look at the Vikasit Bharat dashboard in Niti Aayog, it can draft a cabinet note in 3 seconds and give it to you. Yeah. Right? That is the change so we are living in that world. But I think social sector innovation thinking is not somehow linked to technology enablement. And that is where a lot of patient capital needs to go, we still think problems in the pickle papad economy. As social, I'm being very honest, even I would tend to get into that group. We have to move along and we have to leapfrog because the problems are leapfrogging and solutions have to leapfrog.
Thank you. That's a great note to end on. The TV is flashing, time's up, so I don't know whether we have time for any questions. I'm going to ask the organizers if we... Yeah, I know. That's why Can anyone guide us? We have time for any questions? We can take one question. So, yes, we have a gentleman here in the front row.
I actually have a longish question.
Well, then let's take someone with the shortest question.
having admitted that, please allow me part of it.
Is it a comment or a question?
No, it's a question.
It's a question. If you can summarize it in 12 words, that would be great.
Okay, no, I can't.
I would suggest take it offline with any one of us. Thanks. Appreciate your... there's a question right there. Yeah. Yeah, we will keep ourselves available outside. So you can follow up with any one of us, whoever is directed to. Yeah, sorry, someone's getting a mic to you, sir.
Whatever concern you have raised, we have listened you carefully, and I have already a draft which resolve all those things. We'll take it on a single platform, how the innovation will happen, how we can resolve the problems of samaaj, sarkaar and bazaar on a single platform where the technology will play a huge part, and whatever we have discussion about, that draft is more or less ready. We have to give a preparation, presentation part of it is lacking, and we'll give you the solutions.
Excellent.
Whatever we have discussed.
We would love to see it.
Thank
Please
you.
share it with
The
folks at Nudge. And
name of the NGO is Nishchal Dhara.
Excellent.
Nishchal means where there is no deceit.
Thank you.
And it is a platform which take problems to solutions.
Excellent. Thank you so
bridging
much.
between government, society and bazaar. Real-time, practical-based, adoptable solutions.
Thank you. I'm told that our time is up. So thank you so much, everyone, for being a patient audience. And thank you to my fellow panelists. I learned a lot hearing all of you today. Deeply grateful. Thank you.